are going to cover the Eagles' self-titled debut album, The Eagles. And I'm actually going to start us off on this one. But before I do that, Matt, please run the numbers for us.
So this is actually the Eagles' 6th highest ranked album on Best Ever Album. So there's 5 others ahead of this. I don't know if we're covering all of those. But anyway, this is number 676 in the 1970s, number 68 in the year 1972, 3,805 of all time. And on Best Ever Albums, it's number 207. I'm sorry, on Rolling Stone, it's number 207 of all time. So the Rolling Stone people liked this a heck of a lot more than the Best Ever Albums people did.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, it doesn't take long for you to realize you're listening to an Eagles album, does it? Because you get Take It Easy and Witchy Woman right off the bat. So when I think of, Eagles songs, it's just a series of singles, right? It's Desperado, Hotel California, and of course, Witchy Woman and Take It Easy. I mean, to the point where the Eagles have become pop culture, right? Whether it be the Lebowski clip I put up about the Eagles, whether it be Seinfeld, where the Desperado and then Witchy Woman. I mean, so first off the bat, you've got that. Also, when you listen to this album, you hear the next 15 years of a certain type of music, and you realize that the Eagles were very much at the forefront of that. I mentioned that Steely Dan was creating, to some degree, AOR, and it is true. Yes. Yeah. They were doing it in one way, and there's some overlap with what the Eagles are doing here, but the Eagles do that sort of, they kind of take that AOR sound and mix it with a little bit of Beach Boys, I think, like with their thematics and sort of the harmonies harmonizing, and even the guitar sounds like the evolutionary Beach Boys, right? Like what it seems like surf music moving into the 70s, right?
Maybe the attitude too. That's kind of,
Well, they're very California. That's the first thing, not just because of Hotel California. There's no more California band than the Eagles, I think, really, in that way. And so that comes through. I never know what to think of the freaking Eagles because I'm decidedly in the middle on the Eagles. I do not love the Eagles. I don't hate the Eagles. It's I can appreciate something like Take It Easy. It's like eating cotton candy. It doesn't have a lot of substance, but at the same time, in the right moment, it can clip. I understand why people like it. It certainly is not the worst thing in the world, but it's just sort of there. The Eagles also feel like one of these bands that has always existed and will also always exist. They also are one of those bands that's really interesting because in my age group, I don't know a lot of people that are huge Eagles fans, but also they've sold 7 bajillion copies of their albums. So but yet somehow all critics and people who are in the music know always say they hate the Eagles, yet somehow they sold like 50 million albums of different stuff. So you have to wonder what the disconnect is there. So I am as befuddled after this album as I've always been with the Eagles because I don't even know this is the definition of what I call a 40 to 42 point album on my scale out of 60. It's dead middle, league average middle. It's, you're going to know Take It Easy and Witchy Woman. You probably will know Peaceful, Easy Feeling because that's another one that gets played on classic rock stations a lot. I've certainly heard Train Leaves Here this morning and Nightingale at different times too. It's a certain sound that is the Eagles. It's the 2 different singers, Glenn Frey and Don Henley, right, going back and forth, often alternating track to track. I'm more of a Glenn Frey voice guy than a Don Henley voice guy in terms of Eagles songs. We can argue about which one you like better. There's the long guitar, the elongated chords that I always think of like Taylor Hawkins being enamored with on that Foo Fighters thing. Oh yeah, where he goes and meets the Eagles.
I forgot about that.
And remember how just excited he is to hear the like long guitar parts like played out, and it just that cracks me up. But it's all the pieces that you'd expect from the Eagles, and so I'm going to defer to you guys. I'll talk a little bit more about what those pieces are if we don't get into it in your reviews. But yeah, very in the middle for me. Continue to befuddle me, the Eagles. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's so easy or cliche to kind of hate on the Eagles at this point, at least in my experience. But like you said, I'm not sure who whose like favorite band is this other than people that were like into it when they first came out? I don't know. I didn't discover anything new about the Eagles on this album that that made me like them more. I think they're okay. I feel like I was really trying to think about them in the context of 72 and why this album was popular. And my theory or hypothesis is that maybe it was and especially after watching that the documentary series that we keep talking about, 1971, I think this is almost like a rebuke of all of the interesting music that was going on at the time, or the chaos that was happening in the world. I think people were kind of looking for something that was palatable and not offensive and not just like relaxing type of enjoyable music. And I think the Eagles like deliver that. But as a result, I think they're kind of generic, and I don't find them particularly interesting even from song to song. I feel like they just kind of hit the same notes for me every time I hear them. Like you said, all of the singles on here, Take It Easy, Witchy Woman, Peaceful, I had heard before. The other songs, like Chug All Night, that sounded like a weak CCR attempt to me, but also kind of like a party song. And Nightingale, there's some country tinged things on this, like Train Leaves Here in the Morning. I think they're trying to do that. I think because they're from California, I get kind of like a Southwest desert vibe sometimes from their songs. Like on Take the Devil, I heard that, maybe with the guitar too. Sometimes they do little interesting guitar solos or pleasurable guitar solos, like on that song. And Peaceful, man, I knew that song. I wasn't looking at the track list when I was listening to this album. I knew that song in like the first 3 notes, probably. Matt, we were joking about that earlier. I don't know why I picked that up so fast, but
that's the song that's playing in Lebowski when he's in the cab and he gets thrown out of the cab because he hates the fucking Eagles.
Well, you know what's funny too? Like, none of the Eagles are from California.
Yeah.
Like, Joe Walsh is from New Jersey, like by way of the Midwest.
Is he even in the Eagles at this point? Didn't he come in later on? Like, was he an original Eagle?
You watched the documentary, didn't you?
No.
Well, I mean, the funny thing about Joe Walsh is people love Joe Walsh, but he's in like 3 of the he's in 3 of the exact same bands. He's in like Ringo's band, right, which is very generic. He's in the Eagles, which I always think of as being like very generic, and he's in the James Gang, another like to me very generic band. So like, but I also know that like Pete Townsend and Eric Clapton love Joe Walsh, and they're like, oh, he's one of the few guitarists I listen to. So, I mean, and I saw how Dave Grohl and stuff fanboyed out for him. So, I mean, I know there's got to be something too. I've just never really seen it.
He joined in 1975, so this is he replaced the guitarist Bernie Leadon. So I did look that up. So
and you could tell because the guitar parts aren't as good. That's the best way I could put it. They aren't. It's the singing's better than maybe some of the later stuff, but yeah, the guitar parts are definitely not as prominent as later Eagles for sure.
Yeah, they're good at harmonizing. I think they are decent guitar players. Some of the stuff is good on this album, but I just couldn't get into it. I don't like John. I don't hate it, but I thought Steely Dan was like way more interesting as a counterpoint which is a similar type of band, but they have some added element that I responded to more.
Yeah. Matt, what's your take?
So so it's piggybacking off of the whole Steely Dan thing. So those are 2 bands Steely Dan and the Eagles are 2 bands that I have historically said that I've hated. And I was turned around a little bit on Steely Dan with the album that we covered today, with this episode. So the Eagles, the positives here. I do like
I'm turned around on the Eagles too.
I'm not going to go there. I do like Take It Easy.
But you don't hate him as much as you hate some of the other stuff that you've hated. I'm getting a feeling is going to.
We'll see.
Okay.
So I've always Take It Easy is a good song, and I believe Jackson Browne co-wrote that, which I've always said
I think you're right.
A Jackson Browne's, and it actually sounds like a Jackson Browne song.
It sure does.
Too, but that's a catchy song. It's got a great. It does have that country thing. The thing I picked up on that song, which I never realized before, is the banjo. Like I was listening to the headphones, and there's a prominent banjo part in there that I was kind of like, ooh, I did not know about that. And I kind of liked it. So I even like that song, I think, more.
There's banjo on Early Bird, too, I noticed.
Yeah, there's the banjo. Yeah, well, that's like a straight-up banjo song. But this is kind of a little bit more in the background, which ordinarily I'm listening to this on, it's in the background. It's on the radio. It's on a TV show or whatever. But I never picked up on the banjo before. So I did like that. Witchy Woman, I always do think of Seinfeld when Elaine's like, I want that to be our song when her boyfriend's really into Desperado. And I was like, what the hell is Witchy Woman? There's actually kind of a cool descending melodic guitar part that's kind of going on in there, which I thought was kind of interesting. Not a huge fan of the chorus, but what else? There's elements of this that's kind of in my wheelhouse. So you do have that country rock, which I do like. And with a song like, I think, Josh, you mentioned The Train Leaves Here This Morning. Mm-hmm. That to me sounded like a song that could have been on one of these Grateful Dead albums that we've covered. The American Beauty or The Working Man's Dead. It's kind of got that Grateful Dead vibe to it with some of the harmonies too. I think there's definitely, you can definitely pick up a lot of the harmonies here. And I do like that Dead stuff. It's just it fell flat for me, and I think that both of you guys have used this word, but the best word that I could use to describe this is generic. This is generic 70s rock. This is what I'm hearing. It's in the background. It's not. There's some perfectly fine things going on here, but this is not really moving me in any way. And there's actually, like, Chug All Night is a great example of this. This is one of those songs that on one listen, I'd never heard the song before, and I'm listening to it, and I pick up on the lyrics because the lyrics are so dumb, right? This is one of those songs that I've said that I could recognize when a song has dumb lyrics or bad lyrics, and to me, Chug All Night is kind of just these, like, really...
No, it's not the only one. I can tell you that.
It's not the only, but it's the one that's. And I'm like, what is it? And I looked them up, and I'm reading through. I'm like, no, I'm not wrong. They're dumb. It's like, let's just chug all night. We can hug all night. The band is.
Well, yeah, and they're not even like fun. They're not even like fun dumb like Kiss, or something where it's like. Yeah.
It's just like, hey guys, here's the music. Somebody just throw together some words to put on this, and we'll record it in 5 seconds, right? Or in 5 minutes, right? So. I don't like this. This is not it. It's just, and I think that what puts it over the edge for me, it probably is, John, what you're describing as kind of like a perfectly mediocre album. But when people talk about the Eagles and the bajillion copies of albums that they sold, and like all this, I remember in the 90s when the Hell Freezes Over tour came back, and my mom spent the ridiculous fee of $100 to see the Eagles live during that tour. That was like a huge thing. My mom's like, wow, I don't know if I really like the Eagles though, so I'm going to pay $100. And everybody's like, oh my God, $100 for a concert. That was like a huge thing in 1994 or whenever it was. But like to have all of this like praise and whatever for a band that's just kind of, talk about no edge, wimpy, just generic, just it's there, right? And I didn't really, aside really from Take It Easy and a couple of parts here and there, like I said, Witchy Woman, Peaceful, Easy Feeling, the chorus, I don't mind too much.
Nightingale's not a bad song.
What did I say about that? I just felt that was generic. It's just kind of, it's just there, it's not, and that's the thing. It's just, it's okay. It's just there. And I'm like, why do you, I don't get it. You're right. I don't know anybody our age that loves the Eagles as well. This definitely seems to be more of a generational type band, but they did sell. When you talk about the Greatest Hits album, like that's the one that sold. I don't know where it is, but it's like top 5 maybe of all time. Like it's so people love them, and I think that's what puts me over the edge. It's one of those bands that I'm like, okay, it's like the Rod Stewart thing, but only to a larger extent because people love the Eagles way more than Rod Stewart, and it's just like, come on, man, there's so much. There's bands that do the same, do a similar thing way better to me than what the Eagles have done. So.
Can I play a little game with you guys? Because I have a theory, and you guys can tell me if it's a theory you ascribe to. I believe that every 5 years there comes a band that's palatable to the masses that you look at, and they sell tons of albums. but every 5 years it's the same band. They may not sound exactly the same, but they have a sound that breaks into the mainstream. Critics hate them. They sell a zillion albums. They kind of go, and I feel like the Eagles are that for the early 70s. And to give you like another thing, I think Nickelback was that for the early 2000s, right?
That's Hootie and the Blowfish.
Hootie and the Blowfish, you nailed it, Josh. That was who I literally picked for the late 90s. Yeah. Hootie and the Blowfish. So obviously you get what I'm saying there. Yes. So who are those bands? So we named 3 right there. Late 90s is Hootie and the Blowfish. I would also throw a honorable mention to the Goo Goo Dolls for the late 90s as well, for a band like that. You know, people may not like that as much. Early 2000s, definitely Nickelback. Yeah. Who can we name as other bands that fit that criteria in the late? Oh, that's a pretty good one, Matt.
Yeah, that's.
I think they're a little bit better band.
I will say that because I'll go to bat for their first 2.5 albums that are as being very good albums.
Viva La Vida is a pretty good album too.
That's got some moments. That's got they're certainly better. The Killers, maybe. I don't know if they were. I'm just trying to think of who's a rock band nowadays. First of all, that's like.
Well, I'm thinking 70s. So like I know some people would say Boston. Oh yeah, nowadays it probably is the Foo Fighters, isn't it? But I think the late 70s people would say Boston, but I actually think Boston's a pretty good band. And I think people have kind of turned around on that a little bit. Maybe Journey? Would it be Journey?
Although maybe. I think people have turned around on Journey too.
I think all of these bands that you're mentioning, I would much rather listen to them than the Eagles. I see what you're saying though, John. That's an interesting
well, and then
point.
It's like, is 80s Aerosmith that band for the 80s? Because, do you have to ignore that?
Do the critics hate Aerosmith and
no, they
and
love
Eagles?
70s. They love 70s Aerosmith. They hate 80s Aerosmith. They tend to be very flat on the Eagles in terms of critical acclaim.
I'm okay. Now I got to look to see how many we're covering of the Eagles in our.
That might be an essential question for
only one. Hotel California is the only Eagles album that's on the best ever albums top 100 list. So.
And that that might be the question we have for the essential question next time. And then number 2, I want to say is I don't know if there's an artist whose solo career after being in a big band I hate more than Don Henley. I don't know if there's any solo artist who I don't like anything Don Henley. Like, he somehow managed to combine the worst of like Bruce Springsteen nostalgia with like the most trite lyrics and just like he was like the worst of Phil Collins and the worst of Bruce Springsteen and like every single one, like mainstream, like who has like love and hate, all of them, the worst of them, like was what Don Henley's. And I remember Age of Innocence. It was
End of the Innocence.
End of Innocence. Oh, it's fucking awful. Like,
I will go to bat. I have always liked. I will say this. Full disclosure. I've always liked the Boys of Summer. I've always liked the End of Innocence.
I hate that song. I hate it.
I've always liked. What is it? The Last Resort is a good song too. I always like those songs.
All She Wants to Do Is Dance. They're all awful.
Oh, Heart of the Matter. The Heart of the Matter. I always like that too. I like Don Henley better than the Eagles. I like that 80s cheese as well.
I don't agree with that at all.
I totally understand.
I like Glenn Fry's direction more. If we're gonna make that, if we're gonna.
Oh, he does like. Didn't he?
At
do
least
like
his heat is on,
right? Yeah.
But it's like Don Henley's solo career. It's like if you think Bryan Adams, doesn't give you enough nothingness, then I've got Don Henley for you and I just remember on MTV, it was one of the few artists that as a kid, I had to turn off his music because I hated it so much. At least like somebody like Bryan Adams had like Heaven or something, which I could at least sing along like a power ballad. Right? Nothing from Don. So I have to throw that out there. Don Henley's solo career, probably my least favorite solo career of any person from a band going solo. So
yeah, That's more my own guilty pleasure thing. So, because I know most people like that, our peers of mine and stuff all agree. Like, yeah, nobody really likes Don Henley, but that's an interesting. I like your framework there, John. This is a band that's just never really. They have moments. There are some songs that I do like. I do like Hotel California. I do like Desperado. I like Take It Easy. But as to get the praise and the album sales and stuff, and I'm like, I don't. There's so much better stuff. There's so many other artists that you could go to and get a much better version of this. you know.
Yeah, I think that's the indictment for me, is that I could name 3 bands that do the Eagles in the 70s better than the Eagles themselves. So it's kind of, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think there's probably a million other bands that were around at the same time doing the same type of music, and the Eagles were just the ones that got lucky.
But this is I think, and I would say this too before we move on. I think this is the first album that we've covered in the 70s that has hit that sounds like that 70s rock, like that generic 70s rock that you put on a classic.
Well,
radio
Steely
station.
Dan does too, but not as generic.
Yeah, but that was much more interesting. That musically, that was a much more interesting album. And this just seems like 100 other bands, like bar bands, trying to do this. That just makes you go, okay, that's fine. But to be like, oh my God, the Eagles, like, whatever. I don't get it.
I wonder if people like this band because they just like singing along to the songs.
Well, I think you're on to something, Josh, where this is kind of a rejection of the 60s, because the 60s was pretty freaking dark in 1971. Like, everybody was dying, right? And I think a lot of people are like, where does this lead to? You know, like, if everybody we listen to gets eaten up by this lifestyle. And as you said before, they're doing more simple music for like the complex stuff that's better. Not all the complex stuff was better. There's a lot of stuff that sucked as well in the 70s and 71s that was complex, right? And I think some people are like, if I'm going to listen to like mainstream radio, I'd rather listen to somebody that has no guile and plays songs I can sing along with. And kind of it's a little bit of a rejection of the 60s, isn't it? Because I feel this is kind of music that absolutely rejects a little bit of what the 60s was, and I think that's why critics hate this stuff, because they were part of
the 60s.
But that was a rebellion against that, because it's like a lot of people were like, Jimi Hendrix dead at 27, Janis Joplin dead at 27, everybody else using drugs, the Stones are out here, tax exiles, stuff like that. The Beatles can't get along, everything's there, and it's like, take it easy. Or trying, which I feel is the most Eagles song on this entire album. Like, you can't pick a better song of what people may not like about the Eagles than Trying. It's just there.
Yep.
It is just there.
This album is just there. Yep, for sure.
Yep. All right. Any final thoughts, guys?
No, I knew we would have a lot to say about this.
Yeah, I hope people attack us I actually really would like diehard Eagles fans to kind of come in and go at us. I actually would welcome that. So,
man,
if you're a diehard Eagles fan,
I've had a really rough day, and I hate the fucking Eagles, man.
I put that clip up. Well, that's the kind of guy I want, though. The guy who kicks him out of the.
Get your own cab, man.
So, all right. End of the Eagles segment, and we are at our last segment. It's not going to be the last time we cover this guy, but there's only one first time, and this is the first